Hello everyone, welcome to What If Deku Was Got Teleported to Rent a Girlfriend and Makes Big Harem Part 2. Before we start, please go support Luis on 2234V for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Deku is a male. Planning and training. We met at Izuku's house where he and Bakugo were putting together a plan to defeat Shigaraki while the girls watched them. Izuku, so, that would be all, we are ready, he said with a determined smile. Bakugo, you're right nerd, but he changed to a serious tone, and what will be plan B in case this one doesn't work, he said, attracting the girls' attention. Izuku, do you remember when we fought against 9? He said in a serious tone. Bakugo, don't tell me that, he said this to put on a challenging smile. 2-1 for all, he said this to surprise the girls. Mizuhara Sumimami Ruka, what the Force said in shock. Mizuhara, he also has the Ofa, he said this to surprise Bakugo, who hit Izuku with an explosion. Izuku, hey moron, what's wrong with you? He said, somewhat annoyed. Bakugo, what's wrong with you? Everyone who knows about Ofa is supposed to be in danger, and you tell your wives, he said seriously. Izuku, but that was only when AFO was still alive, he said this to surprise Bakugo. Bakugo, don't tell me that, he said this to hit Izuku, you killed him without me. Damn nerd, he said this, making a drop of sweat come out of the girls. Izuku, it wasn't a big deal, he said, putting his chest high, but instantly changed to a serious tone, surprising everyone. I never knew Shigaraki would follow you. I thought everything was over. Bakugo, if I had known that idiot would follow me, I would have stayed in my world, he said with his typical tone. Izuku, okay, but for now, we must train to be able to beat him. Remember that his power is not as much as AFO's, but he is very annoying. We cannot afford to let him touch us, he said seriously. Bakugo, you're right, he said this in the same way, but then an idea came to his mind. Putting on a smile, hey nerd, he said this, attracting Izuku's attention. Izuku, what's wrong? He said confused. Bakugo, I have a good training. Izuku, which one? Bakugo, let's fight, he said this to attract the attention of Izuku and the girls. Izuku, that seems like a good idea to me, he said with a challenging smile. Mommy, no, none of you will fight, you can destroy the place, she said, raising her voice. Izuku, no, honey, he said in a scared tone, we will go to a meadow that is far from here. Mizuhara, they better, she said with a cold tone. Ruka, we don't want the house to be destroyed, he said anyway. Sumi, because if they do. Ruka, Sumi, Mizuhara, mommy, you will pay for this, they all said, pointing at Izuku. Izuku, why yes, don't worry. I've told you how pretty you look when you're calm, he said this so that the girls would look at him seriously. Ruka, we're serious, darling, she said with a smile that promised pain. Izuku, why yes, we will go away. Bakugo, laughing, haha, nerd already has a leash, she said while taking out a vein in Izuku. Izuku, ah yes, you damn firecracker, he said, angering Bakugo, you want a fight, you'll have a fight, he said to get close to Bakugo. Sumi, Izuku, she said this with an angelic smile but with an aura of death. Izuku, but far from here, she said this to proceed to leave with a Bakugo dying of laughter. Bakugo, there is always a nerd so tame, he said so that Izuku would hit him. Izuku, I can't wait to hit you, he said this, but it was stopped by a call from the girls. Mizuhara, Izuku, wait, can we go, she said with puppy eyes. Ruka, if we want to see them fight, he said while moving his arms. Mommy, please, she said with the eyes of a scolded puppy. Sumi, yes? She said it the same way. Izuku, okay, let's go, he said as he proceeded to leave with the girls. On the way to the field, they were talking about trivial topics and one or another fight between Izuku and Bakugo that was stopped by the girls, and that's how they arrived at the place where the fight would be called. Bakugo, ready nerd, while doing stretches. Izuku, like never before, he said, activating the Ofa. Ruka, I think this will be a very destructive fight, she said, a little excited. Mizuhara, Sumi, mommy, I believe it, they all said in unison. The fight had started, no one moved. They waited for the right moment to attack, and a scream from Bakugo was the one that brought Izuku out of his thoughts. Bakugo, here I go nerd, he said, pushing himself with his explosions. Izuku, yes, he said this to launch himself with the Ofa. Bakugo threw an explosion at the green-haired boy's face, who dodged it but couldn't avoid getting a little hurt by the expansion. Bakugo took advantage of this to throw another explosion at his face that sent him flying, but Bakugo was impressed to see that the green-haired boy was only a little hurt. Izuku, wow, I expected more, but now it's my turn. Then Izuku with 40% of Ofa shot out towards Bakugo and kicked him in the face that sent him flying. Bakugo, as he could recompose himself, but he didn't expect the green-haired boy to arrive so quickly to receive him with a knee in his stomach that made him spit blood. Bakugo, as he could grab Izuku by the arm and with an explosion sent him flying into a tree, destroying it in the process. The girls just looked on in amazement at such a fight, although they were sure that Izuku would win. After that, Izuku decided to end the fight. He increased the Ofa to 80%, and a simple kick to the head was enough to leave Bakugo unconscious due to the power of it. The girls were proud of Izuku because he won. Then Izuku carries Bakugo, and together with the girls they proceed to go sit in the shade of a tree. Izuku, wow, that was a tough fight, he said, looking at Bakugo. You've become very strong, my friend. Mizuhara, hey, do you want to eat? She said, showing a basket. Oh, yes, they said with excitement. Izuku thinking, I must enjoy the peace while it is here, Tamura Shigaraki. I swear I will defeat you, he thought, and then put on a smile. We found you. Izuku and Bakugo spent weeks looking for Shigaraki. The girls were worried about Izuku since he didn't get to sleep or eat, but he told them to stay calm, that after all this was over they would go on another trip. But he only said this to reassure the girls since Izuku knew the danger that comes with facing Shigaraki. Not because he's stronger than AFO, but he's more of a strategist. Izuku would be lying if he said he wasn't afraid. He was afraid that Shigaraki was going to do something to his wives, and Bakugo knew that. That's why Bakugo wanted to talk to the girls when Izuku was gone to see what they could do, because if they continued at this rate Izuku would mentally collapse. Ruka, then why did you want to see us, Bakugo? She said seriously next to the others. Bakugo, I want to talk about the nerd, he said, this scaring the girls. Mommy, did something happen? She said, worried. Bakugo, no, but I'm worried about what might happen to him, he said, worrying the girls. Sumi, what do you mean? She said, worried about Izuku. Bakugo, the nerd could collapse and go crazy, he said, this leaving the girls in shock. Mizuhara, why do you say that? She said worriedly. Bakugo, the nerd has spent more than 2 weeks without sleeping well, and he spends his time searching all over the city for Shigaraki. He hasn't eaten well because he's been searching. He's afraid, he said, surprising the girls. Ruka, I'm afraid? But afraid of what? She said, worried about Izuku. Bakugo, the nerd is afraid that if he doesn't find the bastard soon, something will happen to you, he said, this surprising the girls. He doesn't want anything to happen to you, he said this so the girls would feel sad. Sumi, so he's forcing himself so much for us, she said sadly, almost to the point of tears. Bakugo, I'll give you a little explanation, he said this so that everyone could see. A quirk is not very different from a physical ability. It is something we are born with, our body is used to it, but the nerd was born without one, and he was inherited a very powerful quirk. So this power causes repercussions in his body if he uses it for a long time. Right now I wouldn't be surprised if the nerd was about to collapse, and if he continues like this, Shigaraki will kill him, he said seriously. Mommy, and why hasn't he told us anything? She said, worried about Izuku. Bakugo, the nerd doesn't want to worry them, he said this so that the girls would start to feel bad. You have to talk to him. I have to go, he said this to leave and leave the girls sad. Ruka, we have to help Izuku, she said this so the girls would nod. The day had passed and Izuku did not appear. The girls started to worry. It was already 1 in the morning when they heard the door open showing Izuku. Ruka, Izuku, you finally arrived. We were worried about you, she said to hug Izuku. Izuku, I just came for an apple and I'll come back to find Shigaraki, he said while staggering. Sumi, Izuku, you're not going out anymore. Look at the state you're in, she said seriously. Izuku, I can't afford that luxury. I have to find him as soon as possible, he said as he left, worrying the girls even more. Mizuhara, Izuku, please, you are not in a good state. Do not go out anymore, she said this to everyone's surprise. Izuku ignored her. Izuku was about to leave, but he didn't notice when Mommy arrived and slapped him, surprising the girls. Mommy, Izuku Midoriya, she said seriously, you are going to stay here and rest. You can't continue like this, she said while scolding Izuku. Izuku, I can't do it, he shouted, surprising the girls since he had never shouted at them before. Sumi, but why not? She said, also screaming. Izuku, I don't want to lose them, he said, starting to cry, surprising the girls. I couldn't. I'm not that strong, he said, only to receive a hug from everyone. Mizuhara, you won't lose us, Izuku, she said in a calm tone. We will always be there for you, she said, smiling at Izuku. Izuku, promise me? He said, still with tears in his eyes. Ruka, Mizuhara, Sumi, Mommy. We promise you, they all said in unison, just so the green-haired boy would stop crying. Izuku, thank you, he said this and fainted from exhaustion. Mizuhara, let's give him a rest, he deserves it, she said this just for all the girls to nod. The other day. Izuku was waking up. He felt good. It was the first time he had slept well in 3 weeks. He woke up and was surprised to see none of the girls asleep. He went to the kitchen and was greatly surprised to see the girls cooking. Izuku, good morning, he said in a calm tone. Ruka, Mizuhara, Mommy, Sumi, good morning, darling, they all said in unison. Izuku, what are you doing? This curious man said. Mizuhara, we are making breakfast for you, she said with a smile. Sumi, and it's finished, she said this to proceed to put the plate of food to the green-haired boy. And well, try it, she said this so that the 4 girls would stare at the green-haired boy so that he could give his opinion of the breakfast. Izuku, it looks delicious, he said with a fake smile that the girls didn't notice. Izuku proceeded to take a bite of the burned egg, feeling a very bitter taste, but he didn't show it. Izuku, it's delicious, he said with a fake smile that no one noticed. Mizuhara, Ruka, Mommy, Sumi, yay, they all said, happy that Izuku liked the breakfast they prepared. Izuku, being the man he is, ate the whole breakfast, bringing a smile to the girls' faces. Everything was happiness at breakfast until Izuku received a call from Bakugo. In the call, Izuku, what's wrong, Bakugo? He said in a calm tone. Bakugo, I found it, he said seriously. Izuku, where? He said this, changing to a serious face, scaring the girls. Bakugo, it's here in front of me, he said so that Izuku could hang up quickly to go to the address that Bakugo sent him. End of call. Izuku, girls, I have to go, he said seriously. Mizuhara, it's about time, she said scared. Izuku, if Bakugo is already in front of him, I must hurry, he said, leaving the girls scared. Sumi, please, Izuku, when she said this so that Izuku would nod. Izuku, girls, he said this to get everyone's attention. I love you, he said this to leave in a flash of speed. Ruka, I hope he comes back, she scared said. Already Izuku on the road was running at full speed to get to the place where Shigaraki was, and when he arrived the only thing he saw was Bakugo looking face to face with Shigaraki. Neither of them said anything. They were both serious. Izuku, I'm here, he said this so that Bakugo would stand next to him and Shigaraki would smile. We found you, Tamura. Shigaraki, he said seriously. Shigaraki, welcome to your death, heroes, he said with a psychopathic smile. This ends here. The 3 fighters stared at each other. None of them moved. All 3 were serious. The slightest movement would be the bell to start the devastating fight. Bakugo's first drop of sweat falls and the fight begins. Izuku went against Shigaraki, giving him a blow to the stomach and another to the head that sent him crashing into the street. All the people who saw were confused, but they knew it was something bad when they saw the hero Stylex and another companion arrive. The news helicopters did not take long, and the reporter was the same one who documented their battle against AFO. Reporter, we don't know what's going on, but from what we see, a fight is beginning between a guy who has hands all over his body, the hero Stylex, and another guy we don't know, but we think he's Stylex's partner, because of his suit. She said this so that all of Japan would stay glued to their televisions to watch the fight that was coming. Izuku, this ends here. Shigaraki, Tamura, he said this so that Shigaraki smiled, making the hairs of all of Japan stand on end. Shigaraki, sure, hero, don't conf. He couldn't finish speaking when he received a strong explosion from Bakugo. In the helicopter. Reporter, what we see is that the boy in the orange suit can create explosions, but we don't know if they will be enough to defeat this new enemy that appeared out of nowhere. In the fight. Shigaraki, hey second son, you should calm down a bit. I'm talking to number one, he said this so that Bakugo's blood would boil. Bakugo, like you said, piece of shit, you are a bucking cheap villain, you are just a shadow of all for one, he said this to make Shigaraki angry. Shigaraki, you'll regret it, damn it, he couldn't finish because he received a kick from Deku that sent him flying. Izuku, you shouldn't let Bakugo bother you, he said this to see Bakugo. Bakugo, I know, nerd, don't give me orders, he said to point his hand to run to where Shigaraki was. In the helicopter. Reporter, from what we just heard, the boy who caused the explosions is called Bakugo and he is very temperamental, she said with a slight drop of sweat. In the fight. Shigaraki was getting up from the rubble that was there. He had a look of annoyance. He was upset because they were winning. Then he proceeded to get up and began his attack. He saw that Bakugo was coming in the distance, and sent a slingshot of disintegration towards where he was. Bakugo was not going to be fast enough to get out of there. But Izuku was able to get there in time to push Bakugo and avoid the attack. Bakugo, you don't expect me to thank you, nerd? He said in his typical shouty tone. Izuku, okay, but we have to win this as soon as possible, he said seriously. Shigaraki, heroes are like plagues, the world is infected with them. But in this world there is no one with superpowers, they must feel powerful, right, being the only ones in this world to have that ability. Why don't you join me and rule this world, he said this so that Izuku and Bakugo would get upset. Izuku, compared to you, we fight for the good of the people, so that everyone lives with a smile, we fight for the peace of the people, and that peace implies killing you so that you do not continue doing more harm, he said, making Bakugo serious. Bakugo, seriously, let's kill him, nerd, he said a little nervously. Remember Bakugo, this is not our world, here they have nothing to nullify Quirk, our only option is to kill him, he said seriously. Bakugo, then I can go all out, he said with a smile that made Izuku's hair stand on end. You know, second-rate villain, he said, referring to Shigaraki, in these 2 years that you didn't attack, and you did nothing, do you really think I'm still that weak student? He said, widening his smile. I trained to death to surpass the useless nerd, and you want to see the fruits of my training, he said, shouting, well, here I go, devastating explosion, he shouted at the top of his lungs to release an explosion with all his power that Shigaraki couldn't avoid. Bakugo. It seems that was all, Bakugo said as he sat on the ground. I preferred to use all my power so that we would no longer worry about that plague, he said, thinking that Shigaraki had been defeated. Izuku, I wouldn't be so sure about that, he said, a little worried. Bakugo, what? He said in shock upon seeing Shigaraki all hurt but standing. Bakugo, you're supposed to be dead, he shouted angrily. Shigaraki, I must admit it, hero, that explosion of yours almost killed me, he said, smiling, but it wasn't enough, he said, to turn serious. I think I've gotten too confident, it's time to go to my maximum. Shigaraki was starting to breathe heavily, and the atmosphere around the heroes was the same way. The air was heavy and they felt like the ground was falling, but the heroes couldn't articulate words. When they felt a fist hit them and they flew out, but they couldn't compose themselves when they felt how they continued to be hit by several of Shigaraki's attacks. Now the heroes were getting a beating. In the helicopter. Reporter, what we are seeing is something very scary. The heroes are being defeated. No, the reporter shouted, we must not lose hope. I know the heroes will win. Stylex, Bakugo, all of Japan trusts you, she said, recording the 2 heroes. In Izuku's house. The 4 girls were crying watching as Izuku was brutally beaten by the villain. Their hearts ached and they wanted to go help him, but they couldn't. They felt helpless. Mommy, he's going to win, right? She said, scared. Mizuhara, we have to trust him, she said seriously but shedding some tears. Ruka Mizuhara, Sumi, mommy, thinking, you have to win, Izuku, they all thought while crying. In the fight. A very hurt Izuku and Bakugo were seen getting up little by little. Bakugo, he's too strong, I don't think we can fight him, he said, frustrated. Izuku, we still have one option, he said, taking out some blood. Izuku Midoriya as current bearer of One for All, give you temporary fates, so that we can fight against Shigaraki, he said, extending his finger for Bakugo to brush it with his own and licking Izuku's blood. All of Japan believed that the heroes had been defeated. The girls were crying their eyes out. But a ray of hope was seen when the young heroes emerged from the rubble. But everyone was shocked to see how the new hero released the same rays as the hero Stylex. Shigaraki, What did they do? He said, upset. Izuku, Shigaraki, for the crimes you have committed against today's society, you are sentenced to death at our hands, he said in a serious manner, raising his fist along with Bakugo. Shigaraki, don't make me laugh. Do you really think that Shigaraki couldn't finish after receiving a kick at the speed of light? Shigaraki was going to fly away if it wasn't for Izuku grabbing him with the black whips and bringing him closer so Bakugo could give him an explosion. Shigaraki no longer had the strength to continue. Shigaraki thinking, here I am, huh? While he watched the heroes approach him with their last attack. Bakugo and Izuku, this ends here, Shigaraki Tamura, the two shouted while being supported by all of Japan. In Izuku's house. Ruka, Sumi, Mizuhara, Mami, come on Izuku, they all screamed, crying. With the doctor. Doctor, come on son, you can do it. With Sumi's mother. Sumi, come on Izuku, my daughter can't be a widow. With the reporter. Reporter, finish him off, heroes scream at the top of his lungs. In the fight. Izuku and Bakugo, this will be our last attack, they both said seriously. Shigaraki, I scream in agony at the blow that was coming. Beyond it was the great explosion that was heard due to the coup. All of Japan was in shock. No one knew who had won, but that knowledge turned to tears of happiness as they watched the two heroes with their fists raised and the villain disintegrate until nothing remained of him. Izuku and Bakugo, we did it, they both said to bump fists. In Izuku's house. The girls were hugging each other in happiness while crying over Izuku's victory. In the fight. Bakugo, nerd, we have to go, he said this to proceed to walk with Izuku towards their houses. In the helicopter. Report, thank you very many heroes, for saving us once again, she said through tears. All of Japan was celebrating the victory of the heroes, and when they went to thank them, they had already left. In Izuku's house. You could see how the door was opened, showing us our two heroes. Just imagine that it's Izuku and Bakugo, and they're both smiling. Bakugo and Izuku, we're here, they both said in unison to attract the girls' attention. Ruka, Mizuhara, Sumi, Mami, Izuku, they all said, throwing themselves at the green-haired boy. Bakugo, and I'm painted, he said this, but he fell silent when he received the withering look of all the girls. Okay, I'll shut up, he said this sitting down. Izuku, getting up, and now what, friend, he said looking at Bakugo. Bakugo, our promise still stands, I will return to the United States, I will become even stronger, and we will face each other, he said raising his fist. Izuku, I'll be waiting for you, he said, hitting him, but for now you can go to your apartment. I don't mean to kick you out, but I want to sleep, he said with a Saitama face. Bakugo, okay, see you tomorrow, you damn nerd, he said, bursting out laughing as he left. Bakugo came out. Izuku, okay, let's go to sleep, he said this to be hugged by all the girls while they cried, you're okay, girls. Mizuhara, we thought you would die, she said crying. Mommy, we care about you, she said the same. Ruka and Sumi just cried while looking at the green-haired boy. Izuku, girls, he said, drawing attention to these, I will never leave, with a smile that made them blush. Mizuhara, Sumi, Mami, Ruka, yes, they all said with a happy smile with tears. Izuku, now if you allow me, I'll get some sleep while falling unconscious. Ruka, let's let him rest. Mizuhara, yes, he earned it, he said this so that the girls agreed, leaving Izuku on the couch so that he could sleep more comfortably. The amusement park. The battle ended. All of Japan was grateful to the hero who saved them. When they were going to thank him, he had already left. They had no choice but to thank him on the news, which Izuku smiled at every time he saw that. But now everyone was wondering, what was the hero who saved them doing? Well, imagine it's Izuku. Izuku, ah damn, why did you wake me up? He shouted angrily, and the girls just saw this with a drop of sweat. Mizuhara, Izuku, leave the alarm clock, he said laughing. Izuku, oh good morning darling, he said giving a kiss with affection to Mizuhara. Where are the others? He said confused. Mizuhara, they are very excited about going to the amusement park, especially Ruka, she said with a drop of sweat. Izuku, oh yes, I remember what happened while ago, he said remembering. Flashback. Ruka, Izuku, she said, throwing herself on top of the green-haired boy. Izuku's sleeping. Ruka, Izuku, wake up, she said, moving Izuku. Izuku, he was still sleeping. Ruka, well, you leave me no other choice, she said, taking impulse. Wake up, Izuku, she said, throwing herself on top of the green-haired boy. Izuku, oh, he said without air. What's wrong, honey, he said with a sweet voice that hid his pain. Ruka, you promised that today we would go to the amusement park at 6, she said with a tender pout. Izuku, I said, tense, stretching Ruka's cheeks. Ruka, sorry, Izuku, she said while stretching their cheeks. Izuku, I'll sleep a little longer, and then I'll get ready to leave, he said before going back to sleep. End flashback. Izuku, and then, where are they? This curious man said. Mizuhara, they are watching television in the living room. Everyone is ready, only you are missing, she said, sticking out her tongue. Izuku, tell them I'll be there soon. I'm just getting ready, he said sleepily. After Izuku got ready, he and the girls proceeded to leave the house to head to the park, with a Ruka on Izuku's back. Izuku, because you never walked, he said, confused. Ruka, you're not complaining, he said, rubbing his breasts on Izuku's back. Izuku, you're right, he said, this to continue walking. Mizuhara Sumimami. How easy to convince him, they said these with a drop of sweat but with the idea that they already know what to do to convince Izuku. Already arriving at the park, Ruka was surprised by how big it was, since it was the first time she had seen one. Ruka excitedly began to pull Izuku. This seemed cute to Izuku and the girls, since it was like seeing a child with the excitement of going to a park for the first time. Ruka, Vala is huge, she said excitedly, looking at the map of the park. Izuku, well, where do you want to start? He said, seeing the sparkle in the girls' eyes because they had been to parks before, but never in one this big. Sumi, honey, let's go to the roller coaster, she said excitedly, so the girls also agreed. Izuku, okay, let's go, he said happily because of how excited the girls were. After arriving at the roller coaster, and seeing that there was no line to enter, the girls got excited and pulled Izuku into the game. Conveniently, the seats were for 5 people. After getting on the roller coaster, the girls got off very happy, but it was not the same with Izuku. Izuku was very dizzy. He was about to vomit just for the girls to laugh. Mommy, I don't believe it. You can fly and do more than 1,000 turns when you fight, but you get dizzy on a roller coaster, she said with a drop of sweat. Izuku, I've never been very good with roller coasters, he said, putting a hand over his mouth to keep from vomiting. Ruka, hey, I'm hungry. Let's eat, she said excitedly. Izuku, okay, let's go, he said, so that all the girls started pulling him to the restaurant. After arriving at the restaurant, the girls were surprised by the prices of the food, which was quite expensive. Mommy, hey Izuku, we don't have to eat here, you know. Izuku, hey, if it's about the prices, don't worry. Besides, I would never spare any expense if it's about pleasing my dear wives, he said with affection in his words, so ask for whatever you want, he said in a happy tone. Ruka, Mizuhara Sumimami. Yes, the 4 girls said excitedly to make Izuku smile. After eating until they were full, since the food was delicious, the girls and Izuku continued to wander around the park all day, enjoying each attraction. After finishing the day, everyone arrived home. Ruka, wow, it was so much fun, she said, lying on the couch. It was a very tired day, she said, closing her eyes. Sumi, it was very exciting. Mommy, I think the same. Mizuhara, I really liked it, they all said with emotion. Izuku, I'm glad you liked it, girls, he said with a smile. Now that there is peace, we can go out more often, he said this so the girls would get excited. Ruka, really Izuku, she said excitedly, just like the girls. Izuku, yes, he said calmly, but for now I'm going to sleep in my room, he said tiredly. Izuku is gone. Mizuhara, wow, it was a lottery to get Izuku, he said this so the girls would see it. Let's promise that we'll always be there for him, he said this so the girls would smile. Ruka, mommy, Sumi, always, they said these with a smile. Ruka, well, let's go to sleep, she said this to earn a quiet nod from all the girls. Good night, she said, so that everyone could say goodbye and everyone could go to their room. A new threat. After yesterday, when Izuku and the girls went to the amusement park, Izuku had a feeling that something would happen. This feeling was even stronger than the one he felt with All for One, But Izuku didn't want to worry the girls, so he didn't say anything to them. Izuku, what is this? Izuku wondered, a little scared by the strong feeling that something bad would happen. Mizuhara, Izuku, are you okay? She said, confused by how serious Izuku was. Izuku, oh yeah, I'm fine, he said, giving Mizuhara a tender kiss. And how did you guys sleep? He said, watching the girls approach. Ruka, I slept very well, he said, stretching. Sumi, I fell asleep late from watching series, she said, with dark circles under her eyes. Mommy, my back hurts, she said, stretching while holding her waist. Izuku just watched this with a slight smile. Izuku, okay girls, what do you want to do today? He said, looking at the girls. Mizuhara, how about we stay home today watching movies? She said as she sat on the couch with the other girls, with Izuku in the middle. Ruka, I support the idea. Sumi, me too, she said in a loud, tired tone. Mommy, I think it's a great idea, she said happily. Izuku, okay girls, he said this happily, I'll go to the store to buy soda and popcorn, he said this so the girls would nod. Ruka, Mizuhara, Sumi, mommy, yes, they said with joy. Izuku left his house, walking to the store. He felt like the instinct that something bad would happen came back, but this time stronger than ever, even causing him a bit of a headache. When he looked up, Izuku was surprised because he saw that everything was dark. Izuku, where am I? I whispered. Hello? He said in a louder tone of voice. Hello, Izuku, Midoriya, he said this to excite Izuku. You have nothing to fear, young man. I am here to warn you and help you, he said this to confuse Izuku. Izuku, warn me that, he said this confused. A crisis is approaching, young man. Villains and allies from your world will appear once a week. It is not known at what time, it is not known when, but they will appear wherever you are, he said this to confuse Izuku, but that will only be the beginning, he said this, leaving Izuku curious. A great wave of destruction is approaching. And the only way to stop it is. Izuku, is that? He said impatiently. Your death, he said this, leaving Izuku in shock. Izuku, what do you mean my death? He said in shock. Your death will be the trigger for the wave to disappear. You will absorb all that wave so that it does not kill anyone else. But the price is your life. He released this to leave Izuku without any doubts. Izuku, and when will this crisis be? He said confused. It will happen in approximately 2 years. Izuku, I understand, but what do you mean by allies and villains? He said confused. Friends from your land will appear here, but what I can't explain is that only the female gender will appear, but I think I know the answer. Women have been revealed to have a blood flow, distinctive to men. This contains more matter than usual. That will be what will bring them here. The same will happen with the villains, he said, leaving a confused Izuku. Izuku, damn script. What did you say? He said without listening to Izuku. Izuku, nothing, he said, leaving the mysterious man confused. But when will the first hello be? He said confused. It will be in approximately 2 days. That will be the only wave clue I can give you. The following ones will be random during the week. Izuku, wow, this already seems like work, he said, downplaying the matter. Young man, you must protect the people of this land, especially those 4 girls. I know you care a lot about them, he said this so that Izuku would get serious. Protect them, he said this, pointing at Izuku's heart. Izuku, with my life, he said seriously. The strange man was leaving when Izuku asked him a question. Izuku, wait, who are you? He said, confused. The Monitor, you know me as the Monitor, he said this for Izuku to see. The Monitor, I have to go, young man, I hope you can accomplish this mission, he said, retreating. Izuku, what a good Honda, he said this so that everything would return to normal. Time did not pass, he said this, seeing a bird suspended in the air that summarized its flight. So Izuku continued on his way to the store to buy the things, but now with one thought in mind. Izuku, I have to protect them, at all costs, he said this, determined. When I finished buying things, I returned home only to see the girls preparing everything to watch the movie. All 4 of them were wearing Izuku t-shirts that made them look cute. Already finishing preparing the popcorn, Izuku and the girls spent the entire afternoon watching the Avenger saga until night fell. Izuku, okay girls, I have to go on patrol, he said, giving each one a kiss. Mizuhara, careful Izuku, she said this with affection. Sumi, you know you have to come back before 1 in the morning, right? He said with a smile that he promised pain just like the others. Izuku, why yes, I'll be here, he said, a little scared. I love you, he said, to jump out of the window. Izuku, after leaving his house, took a walk around the city to see what he could stop. But he didn't do much. He stopped a robbery. He prevented a store from being robbed, you know the basics. After that he saw that it was already 12:50 and he proceeded to quickly activate the OFA to get to his house, but in the distance he heard a girl's scream. In the alley? Guy 1, come on girl, don't yell, you're just making it more complicated, you'll like it, he said with a lustful smile. Type 2, yeah girl, let's go, he said, this one to touch the girl's face. Please let me go, she said, crying. Izuku, you know people like you dislike me, he said, scaring the criminals. Type 2, SS Stylex, what are you doing here? He said, frightened. Izuku, killing trash like you, now go away or die, he said in a voice from beyond the grave. Type, yes sir, thank you sir, he said before proceeding to run away with the other assailant. Izuku, you're okay girl, he said, this only to be hugged by the girl. Girl, thank you Mr. Stylex, she said, she is crying. Izuku, come on, don't call me sir, you make me feel old, I'm barely 22 years old, he said, laughing. Girl, you are my age ma'am, sorry Stylex. Izuku, yes girl, and tell me, do you want me to take you home, he said calmly. Girl, yes, she said excitedly, by the way my name is Mika, she said smiling. Izuku, okay, let's go, he said this before proceeding to carry Mika princess style, making her blush. After Mika told Izuku her address, they proceeded to arrive at her house. When Izuku was about to leave, Miku shouted to him from afar. Miku, thanks Stylex, I shout this so that Izuku would turn around. Izuku, whenever with a smile. After Mika entered her house, our hero saw that it was 1:30. So he quickly proceeded to activate the OFA and run to his house. But when he arrived, he was not saved from the fact that Sumi was waiting for him. Sumi, Izuku, she said with a pout and a dark aura. Izuku, I'm sorry, but I had to stop an assault, and it got a little out of hand, he said, trying to excuse himself to avoid the beating that Sumi would give him. Sumi, I told you that at 1 o'clock in the morning, she said, preparing to hit Izuku. Izuku, have I ever said how hexy you look when you're not angry? He said this to make Sumi blush. Sumi, fool, said this red one, but with a smile. Just take away your cell phone. Izuku, let's go to sleep, okay? He said in a loving tone. Sumi, yes, she said more calmly, only to be carried like a princess by Izuku. Izuku, tonight I want to sleep with you, he said this so that Sumi smiled shyly but sincerely. Sumi, yes, she said in a loving tone. The next morning they were expected to do something dirty. Well, no dad. Izuku was awake with a Sumi on top of him. Izuku, good morning darling, he said, giving Sumi a kiss on the lips. Sumi, good morning, he said this to reciprocate the kiss. Izuku, well, let's go to the room where I have to talk to you, he said to carry Sumi. Sumi, Izuku, I can walk, he said with a pout. Izuku, but I want to carry you, he said, kissing Sumi. Already in the room. Mizuhara, what did you want to talk to us about, Izuku, she said, confused next to the girls. Izuku, well, first of all I want to tell you that something is coming, he said, confusing the girls. Ruka, something like that, she said. She was confused. Izuku, a crisis, he said this so that the girls would be scared. Mommy, what will happen, she said, she's scared. Izuku, people from my world will come, the first one is scheduled for tomorrow, which I don't know is the time, and from that moment on one a week will come, but it will be at random, he said, confusing the girls. Sumi, and who will come, she said, confused. Izuku, I don't know, they could be allies, or enemies, he said seriously, but that's not all, he said, confusing the girls. A wave of disintegration will come in 2 years and will wipe out the entire city, he said, scaring the girls, but don't be scared. I'll think of something to stop her, he said, calming the girls. Izuku thinking, I won't tell them yet, I don't know how they'll take it, he thought seriously. Ruka, then tomorrow someone from your world will come, but we don't know if they will be an ally or enemy, she said this seriously. Izuku, exactly, he said seriously. Mizuhara, well Izuku, no matter what happens, never forget it. We will always be there for you, he said so that all the girls nodded with a smile. Izuku, thank you girls, I don't know what I would do without you, he said hugging the girls. After that emotional moment, Izuku and the girls carried out their day in a normal way, talking and watching series all together. After that, the night came and Izuku decided that he would take the day off since tomorrow he didn't know what he had to be up for. Prepared. The next day, Izuku got up as usual, had breakfast with the girls and went to patrol the city because at any moment something could appear, and he was right. It was approximately 2 p.m. when a portal appeared in a nearby meadow. Izuku caught up with him to visualize thanks to the fact that he was on the roofs. At great speed he approached, but he was surprised and shocked when he saw who fell from the portal. It was a girl his age, with half red hair and half white that he knew very well. Izuku, Shuka whispered this to increase his speed and be able to carry a fainted Shuka. After that Izuku was a little relieved that he wasn't a villain. Then he arrived home surprising the girls because he had a bicolor in his arms. Mizuhara, Izuku, who is she with jealousy along with the other girls? Izuku, this is Shuka Todoroki, she fell from the portal, Izuku said surprising the girls. Ruka, so he wasn't a villain, she said calmly. Izuku, luckily no, he said this in the same way. He was going to continue talking when he saw how Shuka was starting to wake up. Shuka, where am I? She said a little confused, but her eyes began to crystallize and her legs trembled when she managed to recognize the boy she thought was dead, her best friend too. Izuku, she said incredulously. Izuku, who else do you know with green hair? He said in a mocking tone. Shuka, you're alive, she said hugging the green-haired boy while crying. Izuku, and kicking, he said this to reciprocate the hug. Shuka, we all thought you died after defeating that villain. Then Eri went after you in the portal, then Bakugo disappeared, she said crying. By the way, where Eri is, she said only for the green-haired boy to look down. Izuku proceeded to tell him everything that happened when he came to this world, including about AFO, Bakugo, Eri and the girls. Shuka, I'm so sorry, he said hugging the green-haired boy. Izuku, it's not your fault, he said calmly. Shuka, so wives, hush, she said with a great amount of jealousy that she didn't want to show. Izuku, a long story, he said scratching the back of his neck. Shuka, I can hear it, she said this so that the green-haired boy would shed a drop of sweat. Then Izuku proceeded to tell her everything, how he met the girls and how they decided to share it. Then Shuka, hyper-jealous, made a plan in her head that if she managed to convince the girls to let her join, but that would be tomorrow. Now she was very tired. Izuku, okay girls, who's sleeping with me to lend their bed to our guest? He said this only for Ruka to raise her hand higher than everyone else, including Shuka, making the others sweat. Izuku, okay Ruka, let's go, he said so that Ruka could get on his back. Izuku, sleep well, I love you, he said before giving each girl a kiss on the lips and one on the forehead to Shuka, disappointing her. All Shuka, me too, honey, they all said happily. Shuka whispering, me too, she said with a slight blush. Already in the room with Izuku and Ruka. Ruka, hey Izuku, do you want to sleep? She said lifting her sweater revealing her breasts. Izuku, you know I do, he said this to sleep between Ruka's breasts. Ruka, good night Izuku, I love you, she said in a loving tone. Izuku, me too Ruka, he said kissing her wrist. Ruka, you too Izuku, she said this to proceed to sleep with the green-haired boy on her breasts. The evil that approaches. It was a new day at the Midoriya house. Izuku and Ruka had fallen asleep together to give Shuka a place to sleep. Now we find Izuku waking up next to one of his wives. Izuku, good morning princess, he said in a loving tone. Ruka, good morning Aiza, she said while stretching. The two couldn't continue as they heard a scream coming from Sumi. Sumi, Izuku, they are looking for you, shout from the first floor. Izuku, I'm coming, he said putting on his shirt. Are you coming? He said looking at Ruka. Ruka, no, I'm going to sleep a little longer, she said hiding between the sheets. Izuku, okay, sleep well, he said giving Ruka a kiss on the lips which she reciprocated. Izuku went down to the second floor to see who was looking for him but was shocked to see who it was. Izuku, is that you? What are you doing here? He asked, confusing Sumi and Mami who were listening to this without realizing it. The monitor, young Izuku, I came to warn you, he said, confusing Izuku and the two girls who were spying. Izuku, warn me about what? He said, confused. The monitor, the demolition wave will not come in 2 years, he said, this calming Izuku for a moment, but was shocked to hear the following, it will come in this, he said, impressing Izuku. Izuku, what? He said in shock, but you told me it would come in 2 years, he said, exalted. All the girls went down to see what was happening, but Sumi and Mommy stopped them so they wouldn't interrupt, and just listen, I'm supposed to spend the time I have left with my wives. You told me that the wave would come in 2 years. Now how do I explain to them that I have to die, he said, screaming in a low voice, but it was audible to the girls who were in shock. The monitor, I know, young Izuku, but the only way to stop the approaching crisis is for you to die, he said this, leaving all the girls who were listening even more in shock. Izuku, yes, I know that. Now how do I explain to them that I will die this year? This exalted man said. The monitor, it's June 15th, the hello will be on December 16th. I advise you to spend the best moments with them as soon as possible so that they keep good memories of you, he said, this making the girls start to cry. Izuku, thanks for letting me know earlier. I think you have to go, he said with a dark look. The monitor, I understand, young Izuku, and I'm sorry, he said this to leave. Izuku fell on the couch abruptly. He didn't know what he would say to the girls, or how they would take it, but he began to hear some sobs coming from a nearby wall, and he saw all the girls crying and called them to the couch. Ruka, well, she crying, said, it's a joke, right? She said this just so that Izuku would feel worse and look at the ground, making Ruka and the others understand that it wasn't. Mizuhara, it's not? She said, crying, why did you tell us anything? She screamed while crying. Izuku, I didn't know how they would take it, he said in a broken voice. Mommy, but you had to tell us, she said angrily. Sumi, why didn't you do it? I asked this the same way. Izuku, I didn't know how, he said, starting to cry, it hurts me too, having to leave everything, but there is no other option, he said, causing the girls to start crying. I don't even know how to form the hello to defeat it from the root. I don't know how to do it, he said, crying to be hugged by the girls. Sumi, we will support you, Izuku. I know you will find a way, she said, hugging the green-haired boy while crying. Mommy, you always get out of trouble, why not this one? She said, laughing to lighten the mood. Mizuhara, I know you'll make it. Ruka, and we will be there to celebrate with you, he said, smiling. Izuku, thank you, girls, he said, hugging them. Then looking at Shuka, he said, calling the attention of the aforementioned. Shuka, yes, Izuku, he said this seriously. Izuku, I'm going to call Bakugo. The monster trio is reunited, he said with a smile that spread to Shuka. Mommy, what is the monster trio, Izuku, she said with doubt. Shuka, Izuku, Bakugo, and I were the strongest of our generation. There was no one who could stop us if we fought together, and this will not be the exception, he said with a smile. Elsewhere. Shigaraki, where am I? He said tiredly, but I was dead, he said excitedly. I brought him here, young Tenko, he said this to get Shigaraki's attention. Shigaraki, who are you? He said, putting himself on guard, and how did you revive me? Oh, don't get excited. What I did was that when you disintegrated I put you back together and brought you here like this. Besides, I want the same thing as you, he said, confusing Shigaraki. Shigaraki, the same as me? And what do you want? He asked, confused. Kill young Izuku Midoriya, better known as the Deku hero in his dimension and Stylex in this one, he said to make Shigaraki smile. Shigaraki, I'm in with a psychopathic smile. I'm glad, young Tenko, then I proceed to tell you the plan. Shigaraki, it's a good plan, the damn hero won't even know who hit him, and even more so if you're gaining his trust, he said, laughing madly, but I only have one question, what's your name? He said so that the mysterious man would remove his hood. I don't have a name, but I'm known as the Monitor, and I don't want my future plans to be warned by the hero Stylex. That's why I want to kill him, he said seriously. Elsewhere. Bakugo, die, he said, throwing an explosion at a van full of stolen money. Reporter, great, another victory for the hero. King explosion, she said with emotion while recording Bakugo, the United States thanks the hero, she said with a smile. Bakugo, shit, this is the 4th bank robbery this week, he said, already angry. Bakugo was retreating through the skies with his explosions when his phone started ringing. He went down to a place where no one could see him, to answer. "Hello?" Bakugo said seriously. "Izuku, Bakugo, I need to tell you something. It's serious. I need you to come to Japan. Todoroki is here," he said seriously on the phone. Bakugo, "What?" Half, he said seriously. Izuku, "Yes, the monster trio reunites," he said seriously. Bakugo, "Wow, excellent," he said with a smile. "Tomorrow I will arrive in Japan." Izuku, "I'll wait for you here," hangs up. End of call. Bakugo, "So the monstrous trio, huh?" He said with a smile. "I need to let him know that we will go to Japan," he said to go to his apartment flying. In his apartment. Bakugo, "Honey, you're home," he shouted, waiting for a response. "Here I am, darling," she said, hugging Bakugo. "How was it today?" she said, giving him a smile. Bakugo, "The little shits don't even know that he hits them," he said with a sly smile. "Language," he said, giving Bakugo a slap. Bakugo, "I'm sorry," he said, rubbing his head, "but I have some good news for you. Remember you wanted to go to Japan," he said this so the girl would get excited. "Fork," she said excitedly. Bakugo, "Well, Miss Gwen Stacy, get ready because tomorrow we will go to Japan," he said this so that the girl would jump. Gwen, "Yes," she said, jumping into the air. Bakugo, "Hey, calm down," he said, laughing a little. "Then pack your bags," he said, kissing Gwen. Gwen, "Yes," she said with a calm smile that made Bakugo blush. Gwen, "Oh, I don't believe it, the great Katsuki." Bakugo, blushing, he said, laughing a little. Bakugo, "It's not that, I'm just hot," he said, turning his face. Gwen, "Hey, you don't have to be ashamed. It makes me happy when you show your feelings," she said while kissing Bakugo. Bakugo, "I know," he said, kissing Gwen, "but hey, remember I told you I had a friend called Izuku," he said this so Gwen would nod. "Well, we'll go see him, and an old friend," he said this so Gwen would smile. Gwen, "So friend, huh?" she said with jealousy. Bakugo, "And then it's not what you think," he said with fear. Gwen, "But I still have to mark my territory," she said with a cold look. Bakugo, "Love?" he asked, scared. "No," he shouted when Gwen pounced on him. After a few hickeys here and there. Gwen, "Now the girls who see you will know that you have an owner," with an angelic smile but with an aura behind it. Bakugo, "Why yes," he said, scared. Gwen, "Why yes what?" she said with the same smile and aura. Bakugo, "Why yes, princess," he said, scared. Gwen, "Okay, let's get ready, big guy," she said while kissing Bakugo. Bakugo, "Okay, let's go," he said while carrying Gwen. Gwen, "Hey, but that's not my room," she said, confused. Bakugo, "I know," he said with a smile. Gwen, "Oh gosh, be gentle please," she said, scared. After a while. Gwen, "I told you to be nice," with a pout. Bakugo, "But I was," he said, laughing. Gwen, "Fool, because of you I can't move my legs," she said, exhausted. Bakugo, "But we don't take long," he said calmly. Gwen, "It took us 4 hours," she said, screaming. Bakugo, "But it's always good to get plenty of exercise," he said calmly. Gwen, "But I'm not used to it," she said angrily. Bakugo, "So you don't get angry, how about I take you out to eat?" he said calmly. Gwen, "Yes," she said happily. Bakugo, "Okay, let's go." After they went out to eat, Bakugo and Gwen returned home and then began packing since their flight to Japan would leave tomorrow afternoon. Gwen, "It's good that we're done," she said, exhausted. Bakugo, "Yes, from what the nerd told me we will be in Japan for a while," he said, surprising Gwen. Gwen, "I will be able to learn many things," she said excitedly. Bakugo, "Yes, and I will take you," he said calmly. Gwen, "You know, you deserve a reward," she said with a smile. Bakugo, "So it is," he said this in the same way. Gwen, "You already know," she said, hinting at Bakugo. Bakugo, "Oh my," he said this to carry Gwen like a princess. Gwen, "Please be gentle," she said on Bakugo's chest. Bakugo, "We will not exercise," he said this so that Gwen put on a provocative smile. Gwen, "I know," she said this on Bakugo's chest. The next day. Gwen, "I told you," gentle with a pout. Bakugo, "I told you this wouldn't be an exercise," with a smile. Gwen, "I know, I was the one who hinted," she said, resigning herself. Bakugo, "But you are very beautiful when you moan," he said, blushing to Gwen. Gwen, idiot with a smile, let's go have breakfast. Bakugo, okay, he said to carry Gwen. Gwen, I love you, she said while kissing Bakugo. Bakugo, me too. Gwen, and what time does our flight leave? She said, curious. Bakugo, at 2 p.m., he said. Gwen, it's 10 o'clock, we have breakfast, and we leave, she said happily. Bakugo, yes, he said calmly. The monster trio reunites. United States City Airport. Bakugo, well, that's our flight, he said looking at Gwen. Gwen, wow, I'm so excited, she said with a smile that made Bakugo blush a little. Bakugo, I am so lucky, he said this in a whisper but was heard by a happy Gwen. Gwen, well, it's time to go to the waiting room, she said while holding Bakugo's hand. Bakugo, you're right, he said this one to walk with Gwen, but I feel bad leaving the city alone, he said this one with a touch of sadness, but I still have to take a package to the nerd. Gwen, don't worry, Miles can surely handle them, she said smiling, but what package should you take to him? She said curiously. Bakugo, it will be a surprise, he said laughing, but going back to Miles, I still don't understand how that boy, even without powers, can fight me, he said with a proud smile. Gwen, training I guess, she said shrugging her shoulders. Look, we have to go now, she said to take Bakugo by the hand and get on the plane. Bakugo, yeah, let's go, he said walking next to Gwen. In Japan. Mizuhara, so you have to die to stop the wave, but why? She asked, confused. Izuku, with my one for all, I can absorb energy, and the wave is of disintegration, but part of it is also energy. I have to absorb it all, with no chance of surviving in the process, he said seriously. Shuka, but you are not immortal, she asked curiously. Ruka, but Izuku's immortality doesn't work with disintegration, she said frustrated. Shuka, so what will you do? She said scared. Izuku, absorb the wave, and survive, he said this so the girls could see him confused. Sumi, but you said it yourself, you have no chance, she said resignedly as a few tears came out. Izuku and? He said this one confusing everyone. I could change the future once. Why not do it now, he said this one confusing the girls. Ruka, like you already changed it once, she said curiously. Izuku, when I rescued Eri from the guy who had her, my future was that the guy would escape with Eri and I would die. But I still fought, and I changed the future of someone who had never been wrong in his premonitions, he said, cheering up the girls. Mommy, so that means that with a smile. Izuku, that I can survive, he said hopefully. Shuka, you will live, Izuku, she said with a smile, and we can go back, putting a serious Izuku. Izuku, I'm sorry, Shuka, he said this confusing Shuka, I will find a way for you to come back, but I don't want to go back, he said this confusing Shuka even more, but making the girls happy. I have my family here, he said this to see the girls, and the reason for living in my world is now complete. I killed all for one. I don't have to worry about anything anymore, he said this so Shuka would smile resignedly. Shuka, well, if it's your decision, I can't do anything, he said smiling. I'm staying, he said, impressing everyone. Izuku, but why, he said confused. Shuka, in our world there are many heroes, he said smiling, and I think this world needs them now more than ever, he said this so Izuku would smile. Izuku, yes, he said with a smile that made Shuka blush slightly. At the airport in Japan. Bakugo, oh, good thing we're here, he said stretching. Gwen, it was a long trip, she said tired. Bakugo, okay, let's go with the nerd, he said as he walked. But he noticed that Gwen wasn't following him. What's wrong? Do you feel bad? He said, worried. Gwen, it's just that I'm very tired, she said in a dull tone. Take me, she said with a smile. Bakugo, okay, get on, he said to put his back and have Gwen get on. Gwen, now let's go, she said with excitement. Bakugo, no, you were tired, he said confused. Gwen, oh yes, you are right, ZZZ, she said pretending to be asleep. Bakugo, if you wanted me to carry you on my back, there was no need to say all that, he said with a slight smile. Gwen, I know, she laughing said, but what are we waiting for? Come on, she said using Bakugo as a piggyback ride. At Izuku's house. Izuku, well, dinner is served, he said so that everyone could sit down. He couldn't when he heard someone knocking on the door, confusing the girls. Mommy, who could it be? She said confused. Izuku, I'll open it, he said a little unsure. But when he opened it, he would put on a smile. Look who we have here, he said, confusing the girls. The human firecracker, he said, so that Shuka started dying of laughter, leaving aside his serious face. Bakugo, hey, what's wrong, nerd? Do you want to fight? He said angrily. Izuku, whenever you want, he said, striking a pose. Sumi, Izuku, she said with an angelic smile, what did I tell you about fighting inside the house? She said with an aura, scaring Izuku. Izuku, honey, I've told you how hexy you look when you're calm, he said, thinking it would work. Sumi, no, you haven't told me. Moments later, we see Izuku with several bumps and Bakugo and Gwen with a drop of sweat on their heads. Izuku, but I wasn't even going to fight, he said, shedding comical tears. Sumi, but it's better to be safe than sorry, with an angelic smile. Izuku, well, leaving that aside, Bakugo, it's good that you've already come. Look at Gwen. Who is she? Don't tell me you rented a girlfriend, she said, blushing at Bakugo. Bakugo, hey, no, moron, he said, annoyed. She's my girlfriend, he said, surprising Izuku and Shuka. Izuku/Shuka, what? The two shouted in surprise, making the girls sweat a little. Izuku, hey girl, calling Gwen's attention. Yes, Bakugo kidnapped you and you are forced to be here. Blink 3 times, he said, making the girls shed a bigger drop of sweat. Gwen, I'm not obliged to be here. Calm down, boy, she said, relieving Izuku. Bakugo is my boyfriend. He saved me when they were assaulting Bakugo and we started to get to know each other. He told me that he liked me and we started to be boyfriends, she said, hugging Bakugo. Izuku, I don't believe it, he said, angering Bakugo. He declared his love to you? He said, looking at Gwen. Gwen, yes, blushing and nodding. Izuku, come on, Bakugo. Who would say that when you like someone you swallow your pride? He said, popping a vein in Bakugo's face. But leaving all that aside, congratulations, he said, looking at Gwen. Not everyone can stand Bakugo. Believe me, I've had it since I was 5 years old, he said, laughing. Gwen, yes, he told me that you are his best friend and that he has known you since childhood, she said, making Bakugo angry. Izuku, hey Bakugo, you make me blush, he said, jokingly, making the girls laugh. Bakugo, shut up, nerd, he said, looking down. Here, I brought you this, he said, confusing the girls. Mommy, what is that? Izuku, she said, confused. Izuku, my hero costume, he said, leaving Gwen in shock. Gwen, wait, your Stylex? She said, surprised. Izuku, oh, you know me, he said proudly. Yes, I am Stylex, with a calm smile. Gwen, come on, Bakugo. That thing downstairs isn't your only secret, she said in a whisper that Bakugo blushed and Izuku could hear. Izuku. Just imagine it's Izuku. Izuku, well, leaving all that aside, I'm going to try on my suit, he said excitedly. Moments later. Izuku, how do I look? He said, coming down in his hero's suit, making all the girls except Gwen blush when they see him. Sumi, how hexy, she said without thinking, blushing. Izuku, okay, Bakugo, getting serious, I'll tell you why I called you. Izuku proceeded to tell Bakugo everything about the wave, and what enemies would come, leaving Bakugo and Gwen in shock. Bakugo, then you will die, he said seriously. Izuku, no, he said, confusing Bakugo, I will find a way not to do it, and that is why I called you. I want you to help me train my immortality so that it is immune to the effects of disintegration, he said, to what Bakugo began to think. Bakugo, wait a minute, nerd, wait, he said, confusing Izuku, your metal arm can also use Ofa. Why don't you charge your arm with that energy so that it is the arm that absorbs it and not you, he said, giving hope to the girls. Izuku, I can't, he said seriously, my arm is too small to support all the energy. That's why I want you to help me train my immortality. That's why the 3 of us are here. With a smile, we will be able to stop the wave and the approaching enemies from now on, the monstrous trio. Bakugo/Shuka, reunion, fist bumping between the 3. Izuku, yes, with a sideways smile, but for now, do you want to have dinner? He said to make Bakugo drool. Bakugo, oh, your food, nerd, he said, drooling, but realizes your food is shit. But I will eat it out of politeness, he said, sitting next to Gwen, who had a drop of sweat. Izuku, well, he said, getting up from the table with his glass of wine, I want to make a toast, he said, for everyone to see, because all of us who are here, not only those who have powers, but also those who support us, are fighting for the good of this world, so I want to make a toast, for us, he said, raising his glass. All for us in the same way. Bakugo, defend this world with a proud smile. Shuka, that's what makes us heroes, she said proudly. Izuku, from now on, we all carry the future of humanity on our shoulders, and we will fight to save it with a smile at all times, he said, taking a drink from his glass. All, yes, they said, doing the same. Izuku thinking, I will fight for you, he said, imagining an image of all the girls, Shuka, Bakugo, and Gwen. Bakugo thinking, I will fight for you, he said, imagining an image of Gwen and Izuku. Shuka, I will fight for you, he said, imagining an image of Bakugo and Izuku. Shuka/Bakugo/Izuku thinking, and I will win, they all said with a smile. After that great moment, they continued to have dinner where Bakugo swallowed his pride to be able to order another plate of food. After that, Bakugo and Gwen went to the apartment they rented, leaving only Izuku, Shuka, and the girls. After that, they proceeded to sleep like yesterday, and we found a sleeping Ruka curled up on the green-haired boy's chest. Izuku, I hope to win and not die trying, he said seriously. I couldn't stand leaving them alone, he said sadly. No, I will win. For them, he said, hugging Ruka. Ruka, Izuku, we love you, she said in her sleep. Izuku, I love you too, he said, kissing Ruka on the forehead while she smiled in her dreams. We will win, I'm sure of that, he said before going to sleep with a smile. The arrival of Muscular. Muscular narration. Well, to start, I'm locked up in the Tartar maximum security prison thanks to a stupid child who had a super strength quirk. Since then I swore that when I got out of here I would get revenge on that brat. One day, like any other, I was heading to my cell when a celestial portal opened in front of me and a man came out of it. The monitor, come with me if you want to kill the child who locked you in here, he said seriously. Muscular did not think twice and entered through the portal that closed. Muscular was falling, and the worst thing was that he didn't even know where he was. He knew it was Japan, but less futuristic, but one thing he did know was that the hero Deku was here, and he would kill him. Moments before at the Midoriya house. Izuku and the girls were having breakfast together. Mizuhara, this is delicious, he said with stars in his eyes. Mommy, I don't know how you cook like that, she said the same way as Mizuhara. Sumi and Ruka just agreed quickly with food in their mouths, delighting in the delicacy Izuku had made. Izuku, come on, you make me blush, he said this while playing with the girls, which they just thought was cute. Ruka, well, let's turn on the television, she said happily just to go through the news channel. Ruka hadn't noticed anything, but Izuku had. Izuku, Ruka, come back channel, this exalted one said. Ruka, okay, she confused said. In the news. Reporter, apparently a villain with powers is attacking the central bank of the city. Please evacuate. He is killing left and right, she said, scared. Out of the news. Izuku left in a blur of speed that didn't even give the girls time to react, and he was already gone. At the bank. Muscular, how fun it feels to kill, he said with a smile, but he didn't feel when a fist hit his face, sending him flying. Izuku would arrive at the place and would be shocked to see all the bodies of the dead people. Izuku, what have you done? He said, annoyed and shocked. Muscular, meh, I just wanted to kill, he said, but he started breathing heavily when he felt a great air pressure. What is this? He asked, confused. It's a very heavy pressure, he said, trying not to fall to the ground. Izuku, prepared to die, he said with a black aura behind him scaring Muscular. Izuku versus Muscular. Izuku and Muscular looked at each other steadily. Izuku was upset, he was angry, with Muscular and with himself. If he had arrived earlier he could have avoided so many deaths and destruction, but he would not forgive Muscular for that. Izuku, why did you do it? He asked angrily. Muscular, I just wanted to kill and get your attention, he said laughing. Izuku, get my attention? But you didn't have to kill so many people, he said angrily. Muscular, don't be confused, kid, I killed because I wanted to, he said, leaving the skin of all of Japan watching the news frozen. He also got your attention, he said laughing. Izuku, you are a bastard, he said this annoying. Muscular, they tell me that very often, he said, preparing to hit. Shall we fight? Izuku, I'll kill you, he said angrily. Muscular, try it, he said with a tone of arrogance. Izuku and Muscular launched into blows. At first the battle was very close, but little by little Izuku was taking the advantage. Izuku, you had enough, or do you want more? he said, watching a muscular man slowly getting up. Muscular, you surprised me, kid. You're stronger than last time. While he was changing his eye, it's time to get serious, he said, smiling and increasing his muscle fibers. In the helicopter. Reporter. Oh no, from what we see, the villain who is fighting with the hero Stylex also has a rare ability to cover his arms with muscle fibers, she said. This is scaring the viewers. In the battle. Muscular. Get ready, kid, he said in an arrogant tone. Izuku. Well, you see, Izuku couldn't finish his sentence as he received a powerful blow from Muscular that sent him against a building. What? I didn't even see it, he said seriously as he stood up. Okay, calling Muscular's attention. I think it's time to go to 50%, he said seriously. Izuku in a burst of speed reached Muscular's back to hit him, but Muscular barely dodged it and grabbed him by the arms. Then Muscular in a grotesque act ripped off both arms of the green-haired man, who screamed in pain. In the helicopter. Reporter. No, she said, scared. The hero Stylex has just been disabled to fight. She said she is scared but was happy to see how he has regenerated. But only one arm? Well, from what we are seeing, the hero Stylex can regenerate, but only his right arm regenerated, and we do not know why. She said this, confusing everyone except the girls who already knew. In the battle. Muscular. That's what I like about you, boy. I can mutilate you as many times as I want, and the fun doesn't end because you don't die, he said with a psychopathic smile. Izuku. If you know you can't kill me, he said seriously. 60%, Izuku said in a whisper. Izuku quickly reached Muscular's head, landing a blow that did significant damage to the villain as he was bleeding. Muscular would emerge from the rubble and throw a metal bar. But without realizing it, a civilian was watching the battle. The civilian closed her eyes waiting for her destiny, but it never came. When she opened her eyes, the only thing she could see was the hero Stylex in front of her with the bar buried in his chest. Civilian. Oh no, what have I done? She said, scared, thinking it was her fault. Stylex, you haven't done anything, miss. Now get out of here before you get hurt, he said, removing the bar from his chest, but he didn't see when Muscular arrived with it. Muscular. I won't let her go. I'll kill her first, he said, smiling, but was stopped by Izuku's fist. Izuku. I'll stop him here, he said, looking at the civilian. Go away, he said, holding Muscular's weight. Muscular. Come on, kid, so you keep putting the well-being of others before your own, right? That's great. Now I can see your blood, he said, crushing Izuku. Everyone was in shock, thinking that Izuku did not survive that. The girls were crying, thinking that Izuku's immortality could not withstand that. All of Japan was in shock, but they saw how the civilian began to throw stones at Muscular. Civilian, get away from him, she said while crying. Muscular, wait, okay? I'll kill you right now. I'll just finish with Muscular. Couldn't finish when he felt himself being lifted. Izuku, as if I were going to leave you, he said, standing up, and with him the hope of all of Japan rose. Muscular, this boy is stronger than before, he said, scared. Izuku, you know, Muscular, since the last time we faced each other, I am no longer that scared boy. I am Stylex and I fight for peace, because I learned to give my life for people, and now is the time for it. I will avenge all the people you killed. Your blood will be the punishment for your sins, he said, preparing his fist. Japan was happy that the hero was still alive, and from their homes everyone supported him to defeat the villain, and the girls, well, they were crying with happiness knowing that Izuku was okay. Bakugo and Shuko were going to go to the scene, but Izuku told them not to go, that this was their fight, and they couldn't do anything. They got worried when they saw Izuku being crushed, but a proud smile formed on their face when they saw how he got up. In the battle. Izuku, smash, he said this, shouting at 200%. He said this in a shout, giving a punch to Muscular that went through all his muscle fiber, reaching the head, breaking his neck, killing him on the spot. All of Japan was silent. A smoke screen had risen, but they knew that the hero had won, and so it was, when they saw Izuku with his fist raised in a victory pose. Reporter. Hero Stylex has won, she said happily so that all the viewers could celebrate. Izuku. Hey girl, are you okay? He said, looking at the girl. Civilian. Hey, your mask, he said, pointing at Izuku's mask. It's falling. Here, he said, to give him a cat mask that he carried in his bag. Izuku. Thank you very much, he said with a smile before putting on the mask, making the girl blush. Well, I have to go. Be careful when you get home, he said before jumping away. Civilian, yes, thank you, she said as she watched her hero leave. Izuku, well, time to go home, he said while jumping between the roofs. But he became serious when he remembered the wave will come in approximately 10 weeks. I will face enemies. And I will get allies, he said seriously. I will do my best not to die. I will not leave you alone. Girls, he said in a serious tone. We have discovered the enemy. Flashback. The sky was beautiful, and Izuku knew it. He was looking at the night sky, together with his wives. There was only a week left until the wave arrived. He was afraid, and his wives knew it, so they took advantage of everything moment with him. Izuku left all his money divided into 4 parts for the girls in case he dies, since in all this time he did not know what he would do to survive, but he would try, but he always had to have a plan in case not. Izuku, girls, he said while looking at the starry sky. Ruka Mizuhara Sumimami, yes, Izuku? They all said in a calm tone. Izuku, I love you, he said turning to look at them. Ruka Mizuhara Sumimami, us too, they all said with a smile full of happiness. Izuku, promise me, he said seriously, that no matter what happens, you will continue forward, he said seriously looking at the girls. Ruka, of course we will continue, but it will be with you, he said in a happy tone. Mizuhara, we know you will make it, Izuku, he said hugging him. Mommy, you always overcome adversities. Sumi, and you managed to defeat them, she said this so that everyone would hug Izuku. Izuku, I will do it for you, he said now calmer. In all this time, enemies were the only thing that arrived. After that no allies arrived, and each enemy was more powerful than the last, but Izuku managed to defeat them all. Also in that time Izuku trained his regeneration to the point of no longer getting tired in battles and regenerating any wound in less than 1 macrosecond. And also learned to control the Ofa by 150%, he learned to cover himself from the black whips, creating a type of armor, and learned to fly at supersonic speeds. And with the girls, well, they were devastated. They cried every night in silence so that Izuku would not hear them and worry, but they were afraid. They were afraid of losing the love of their life, the person who supported them unconditionally in everything. They were scared of losing Izuku, but they did not show it. They were always with him and kept a smile knowing that Izuku would achieve it even though they were still afraid. But every day Izuku showed them more that they did not have to, since he would achieve it. At that time, Bakugo and Shuka were having training fights to improve their powers. Now Bakugo could throw explosions the size of a large building and Shuka could throw his ice at high speeds and his fire is blue. The monitor, in that time that passed, continued talking to Izuku, pretending that he was on his side, until one day. Current time. The monitor, so young Midoriya, the wave is coming in 5 days, he said in a serious tone as always. Izuku, I hope I have a chance to survive, he said somewhat sadly. The monitor, I'm sorry young Izuku, your destiny is to die in the wave, he said pretending a sad tone. Izuku, yes I know, but still, I will try, for my wives, he said in a determined tone. The monitor, he gave a laugh that confused Izuku. Well young man, I have to go prepare everything for the wave, he said calmly. See you in 5 days, he said leaving. Izuku, yes wait a minute, he said to himself. The monkey, young Izuku, the portals will be random. The monitor, the next portal will come in 3 days. The monkey, young Izuku, his destiny is to die. The monitor, he gives a slight laugh. The monitor, young Izuku, the wave will come in 5 days. Izuku started to think things over. Izuku, son of a. But later. Bakugo, why did you call us nerd? He said in his typical annoyed tone. Everyone was in the room, Shuka, Bakugo, Izuku, Gwen and the girls. Izuku, I discovered the cause of the wave, he said seriously. Bakugo, what? He said in shock. Ruka, you found out, he said a little happy. Izuku, that son of a hitch deceived us all, he said with an annoyed tone. Shuka, who are you referring to? He said confused. Izuku, there was a person who warned me that all this would come. His name is the monitor, but for some reason he knew it would come and then he would tell me that they would be random. But in some waves he would give me the exact indications of when they would come. Contradicting himself, the bastard has been generating everything. And I don't know what it is, but he has something that allows him to create a wave of disintegration that he knows when it will come. which leads me to be sure that he is the cause of all this, he said seriously. Bakugo. Hey nerd, he said, attracting everyone's attention, don't you think it's Izuku? Shigaraki, he said seriously, leaving all the girls in shock and scared. I thought about him, but we're supposed to kill him. Bakugo. But think about it, nerd, the bastard has the ability to open portals to other dimensions. Don't you think he can revive people? He said seriously. Izuku. I don't think so, but what I'm sure of is that he's the cause of all this. But I don't know where to find him. All I have left is to try to survive the wave and go for him. And I have an idea, he said. Attracting everyone's attention, my power is supposed to absorb the energy of the disintegration, he said, to earn a nod from everyone. So what happens if instead of using my one for all outside, I use it taking the rays inside? He said this so that everyone would start thinking. Bakugo. The energy would be expelled, he said with a smile. Izuku. Exactly, I could send her to the sky and avoid dying, he said, so that all the girls put on a smile. Shuka. So we have an advantage, he said smiling. Mizuhara. We can win. Sumi. They will win. Ruka and Izuku will live. Mami. He will survive. Izuku. Yes, he said, nodding. I will not die. I will not leave them alone, he said, to give each one a kiss. Now we have an advantage, he said, smiling at his team. We have discovered the enemy. The wave is here. December 16th, City, Japan. We found our hero's entire team sitting on the couch. It was 9:50 a.m. The wave would report at 10 a.m. Our green-haired hero was afraid, but it was not time to think about him. They had a plan, and they knew they would succeed. The girls were scared extremely. They were afraid of losing Izuku, but they knew he wouldn't abandon them. But they were still scared. The minutes passed, and our team decided to turn on the news to calm down a bit. Newscast. Reporter. Please, all residents of Central Japan are advised to immediately evacuate their surroundings as well. A mass of energy is coming here and is destroying everything, and the heroes have not arrived, she said, scared. Outside the news. Izuku. It's our signal, he said this so that Izuku, Bakugo and Shuka would come out. Bakugo. Gwen, I love you, he said while kissing Gwen. Gwen, go and win, she said smiling. Izuku. Girls, he said this to get the attention of the four. When I come I will take you on our honeymoon, since we have never been on one, he said this with a smile. Ruka, Mizuhara, Sumi, Mami. Yes, they all said with a smile. Izuku. Well, let's go, he said as he left the house with the other two. Mizuhara. They will succeed, I'm sure, she said seriously. Izuku, Bakugo and Shuka were heading to the place where the wave came from. Then when they arrived they saw something that left them in shock. In the distance they saw how Shigaraki was emanating all his powers generating that wave. Then Izuku said. Izuku, surround and go against Shigaraki. I will stop the wave, he said seriously. Bakugo. Don't give me orders, he said as he ran away followed by Shuka. Izuku. Okay Izuku, you can do it, you prepared for this, so just do it. In the reporter. Reporter. We can see the cause of the wave and how the heroes have just arrived, but the hero Stylex stayed to stop the wave. Will he be able to do it? Let's hope so, she said with fear. With Izuku. Izuku. Well, let's do it, he said this to jump to the wave. Everyone watched in fear as Izuku disintegrated and regenerated over and over again, but each time he did it more slowly. Izuku. Now Izuku said just to activate one for all inwards. People watched happily as the hero absorbed the wave, but watched helplessly as he suffered. Izuku. Just a little more, I screamed in despair. In the reporter. Reporter. Hero Stylex can't absorb the whole wave. Will this be his end? He said, shedding some tears. With Izuku. Izuku. I'm going to die, he said angrily, but he began to remember. Flashback 1. Ruka. Izuku. I love you too, she said while throwing herself on top of the green-haired boy. Izuku. You took the air out of me, he said holding his stomach. Ruka. Sorry, while sticking out her tongue. I can sleep with you. Izuku. Okay, but don't move too much, he said with a smile. Ruka. Okay, while hugging him. Flashback 2. Mizuhara. Well, the day is not over yet. We are still boyfriends, right? She said taking Izuku's hand, blushing a little. Izuku. You're right, let's go, he said with a smile. Mizuhara, hey Izuku, do you want to see that movie, pointing to a movie poster that said, "Will you be my boyfriend?" Izuku, yes, let's go, he said, taking Mizuhara by the hand to enter. Flashback 3. Sumi, Izuku, I take a breath, do you want to see my nose saw? I say it's stuttering but in power. Izuku, yes Sumi, yes I want to be your boyfriend, he said, hugging Sumi. Sumi, oh it's very beautiful, she said, she is looking at a green necklace. Izuku, I didn't know you liked jewelry, he said, surprised. Sumi, it's not that, the only reason I find it cute is because it reminds me of your eyes, she said, smiling. Izuku just entered the store, bought the necklace and gave it to Sumi with a small blush. Sumi, are you sure, Izuku? This is very expensive, she said, surprised. Izuku, yes, take it, he said with a smile. Flashback 4. Mommy, Izuku, you're still awake, she said, sitting up. Izuku, what's wrong, Mommy? He said in a calm tone. Mommy, well, how to say it? Take a breath, I like you, Izuku, she said in a low but firm voice. Mommy, so Izuku, do you want to be my boyfriend? She said. Is happy. Izuku, yes, Mommy, I want to be your boyfriend, he said with a smile so that Mommy would kiss him. Flashback 5. Eri, Daddy? Daddy, are you alive? She said in a very weak tone. What good? She said while closing her eyes. Izuku, Eri, no, don't leave Daddy. I promise you that everything will be okay, he said, crying. Don't cry, Izuku screamed through tears. Eri, you are the best daddy I could ask for, she said, smiling at Izuku. Thank you. End flashbacks. Izuku, no, I will not die here, and I will not let anyone else die, he said as he stood up after absorbing all the energy, sending it to the sky. He screamed because of the pain the energy caused him. In the reporter. Reporter, you are achieving it, she said with joy. With Izuku. Izuku had sent the wave's energy to the sky, and he was alive. Bakugo and Shuka had finished with Shigaraki and went to see Izuku. Shuka, you're okay, he said while watching Izuku fall. Bakugo, I got you, nerd, he said this to carry Izuku on his back. After that, the press arrived to interview the heroes since they were too tired to escape because of all the fighting, but suddenly the appears. The monitor, they have ruined everything, he said angrily, looking at the three heroes, but it won't end like this, they will hear from me, he said as he disappeared. Bakugo, I'll kick your ass whenever you want, he said, annoyed. Hey camera girl, pointed at me, he said, looking at the reporter. Reporter, oh yes, she said, pointing at Bakugo. Bakugo, this is a message for the new villains, or cursed ones who for some reason have powers, no matter where they are, but if they mess with good people, I will blow their asses up, he said, this one annoyed to the camera but seriously. And also, those who want to be heroes, do not give up. Maybe they are not heroes with superpowers, but they can be policemen, firefighters, doctors. They are heroes of the shadows. They are heroes that are not so recognized, but they are. That's all, he said, this one, and left with a nerd on his back and a Shuka next to him. The three of them, we did it, they said, and Izuku regaining a little consciousness. A well-deserved rest. Epilogue. The heroes won, Japan celebrated their victory, everything had been good, and at last there was peace. The waves stopped appearing and the heroes' team each took their own path. Bakugo and Gwen returned to the United States, Shuka also went to the United States but to another place, and Izuku had stayed with the girls. Finally they had peace, everything was beautiful, everyone rested, laughed, played, enjoyed. The girls decided that it was time to take the next step. They wanted to have a child, to which it must be said that Izuku shed tears, since he could still have an heir and a possible bearer of one for all. Flashback. The four girls had called Izuku to the living room. Mizuhara, well Izuku, you know why we called you here, she said seriously. Mommy, we have to talk seriously with you, she said in a serious tone. Izuku, are you going to leave me? He said sadly. Ruka, what? No, she said, laughing a little. Izuku, what a relief, he said with a sigh. Sumi, but I think the time has come to take the next step in the relationship, she said with a shy look at what Izuku would say. Ruka, Mizuhara, Sumi, Mommy, Izuku, we want to have a child, they said in unison, looking at the ground. Izuku, girls, he said seriously. They all fell silent to hear Izuku's answer, and when they didn't get it they thought he didn't want to, but their sadness changed to tears of happiness when they saw Izuku. Izuku, yes, he said happily. Ruka, Mizuhara, Sumi, Mami, Izuku, they all said, rushing towards him. End flashback. In all that time Izuku spent taking care of his pregnant wives since that same night they had done the act, loving each other, where Izuku released his seed inside the girls had become irritable in all that time, due to the fact that they were pregnant. Izuku sometimes had to cross the city to fulfill his cravings. But he did it happy, since he would finally have sons or daughters, he honestly did not care. At that time Shuka and Izuku and the girls were also invited to Bakugo's wedding, who finally decided to get married. Flashback. Father, so Bakugo, do you accept Gwendolyn as your wife, to take care of her in love, sadness, in health and in sickness, in poverty and in wealth? He said, looking at Bakugo. Bakugo, I accept, he said with a smile. Father, and you Gwendolyn? Gwen, I accept, she said, shedding tears. Bakugo couldn't help but cry a little when he saw that. Father, you may kiss the bride. And so the two sank into a deep kiss where they showed how much they loved each other, and the wedding continued, with a few speeches from friends and family, until it was time for Izuku to give the speech. Izuku, well, to start, I've known this man named Bakugo for more than 17 years. We've been friends since we were kids, and it's really a surprise to see him getting married. Light laughter. Since he was little he had a very strong character, so to speak, but I'm glad he found a woman who knew how to control him, he said, so everyone would laugh. Bakugo, I'm glad you found the ideal woman, and Gwen, take care of him, you know how he gets sometimes, he said, letting out light laughter. And well, without anything else to do, I only have one last thing to say. Then the wedding continued, everyone danced, and the moment came when it ended. Bakugo, hey nerd, before you go, he said, taking Izuku by the shoulder. A fight, he said with a smile. Izuku, come on, he said the same. After that Bakugo, Izuku and the girls went to a remote field to have their fight. Izuku, let's give it our all, he said, this to earn a nod from Bakugo. Bakugo, I never get tired of this, he said, putting himself on guard. And at that moment the two run against each other. Bakugo, nerd, he said, this generating explosions. Izuku, kaken, he said, smiling. And flashback. And well, that brings me to the day of delivery of my wives. Well, it was the most normal thing in the world. Now I have 4 children, 1 boy and 3 girls, but I am happy. My wives do not let me start training my son to inherit one for all, he said with a drop of sweat. They say that he is still very young, but to all this, what will have happened to the monitor, you ask? Well, it turns out that all this time he was a fraud who had stolen a machine from All for One to recompose matter, but it was ruined when using it with Shigaraki and the way to create portals. That was his quirk, but he fainted every time he brought someone from the other dimension. But anyway, and that's how Izuku Midoriya, a boy who had the dream of being a hero, ended up in another dimension meeting my beautiful wives and having beautiful children. Subaru, wow. Uncle Bakugo is really strong, said a boy in front of Izuku along with 3 others. Izumi, yes, you're right, he can make explosions, she said, imitating his movements cutely. Kurumi, so dad, that's how you met our moms, she said with emotion. Izuku, yes Kurumi, that's how I met my beloved wives, he said with a smile. Meguru, wow, what a beautiful story, said this tender mind. But Izuku couldn't continue since Ruka, Mizuhara, Sumi, Mami had returned. Ruka, we have the shopping, she said this just so the children would go and hug them. Subaru, Izumi, Kurumi, Meguru, Mom, said the excited children. Izuku, it's good that you're back, he said, giving each one a kiss on the forehead. Sumi, yes, and guess what, today we will eat katsudon, she said this so that Izuku would jump. Izuku, yes, he said excitedly. Ruka, you look like a child, she said, laughing with the others. Izuku, I'm sorry, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. Mommy / Mizuhara, let's eat, they both said in unison. Izuku, yes, he said in a calm tone. And that's how I finally got everything I wanted, wonderful wives and loving children, and now I give my all so they don't lack anything, and I will protect them at all costs, he said with a smile.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.